We're going to let the rest of the folks trickle in here. Good morning, or afternoon, or evening. I have no idea when you watch this or listen to this. I'm excited for the day. I hope you are excited too. It's Friday. They said it couldn't be done, but look at us. We made it. Made it to Friday. Long weekend ahead of us, Memorial Day. Get out there, get to work. There's things to be done. Yards to mow, plants to plant, shrubs to prune. My name is Matthew Leffler. I am the Armchair Attorney. I am so excited for today. You are in for a treat. I love talking to lawyers. I love talking about supply chain, and there's so much to talk about. Now, I am a lawyer, a real-life lawyer, and an adjunct law professor at Michigan State University College of Law. I love to help people as they navigate this incredible industry that we find ourselves in. You can't opt out, you can't get away. But before we get into all of those things, let's give a shout out to my friends over at DAT, Dial a Truck. Since 1978, DAT has been helping people discover more loads. And having just come back from the Executive Symposium in Scottsdale, Arizona, oh my goodness, 80 of the largest logistics companies in the country talking about freight, talking about the industry, talking about regulations. A little bit of everything, my friends, a little bit of everything. I have to tell you, it has been great to partner with DAT on this podcast for the last couple of years. Phenomenal team. If you're new to DAT, you can follow a link that's in the show notes on the podcast to get 10% off for your first 12 months. Phenomenal savings for a phenomenal team. There's so much that DAT is doing to build the most trusted freight network in the country. Trucker tools, outgo, payments. A lot is going on in this space. Now, moving aside from those interesting and fun adventures, I am super excited for today's guest. Now, I have been a lawyer for 15 years, but let me be very, 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 very clear. Nothing that we're going to talk about today is intended to be legal advice. If you think you need a lawyer, you probably do, and it's not me unless you decide to pay me. But the law is something that seems so mysterious, so inaccessible. You look and you see new regulations, or are they old regulations? Driver proficiency, for example, broker transparency, verdicts, liability, all of these things, being able to navigate them is difficult. And the role of a general counsel is twofold: to help the business understand what they're doing and to help them understand the risks that are in front of you. The law is dynamic, just as supply chain itself is dynamic. And so if you don't have great representation, you could open yourself up to untold amounts of liability, and it's not getting any better. So without further ado, I am so excited to introduce to you my next guest, Jim Saidu. He is Vice President and General Counsel for Saddle Creek Logistics, one of the largest 3PLs in the business in the United States. Over $1 billion, big company, warehousing, brokerage, all sorts of great things, which we'll dive into here in a moment. But I have to tell you this. As I taught my class of law students this year in supply chain law at Michigan State University College of Law, I was so excited to reach out to many of the lawyers that have come through Michigan State and now find themselves in supply chain. And for my students that are watching or listening or whoever else is out there, or students in general, this is a master course in how to be a great attorney in this industry. Supply chain is $1 trillion a year. It is massive. And customers, clients, they need your help. Contracts, risk management, labor, the things we'll talk about. So let me introduce you, my guest, Jim Saidu. Jim, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. How are you, Matt?
I am living La Vida Loca. It's Friday. We have a long weekend. The kids are all homesick. It's exactly what I hoped for.
Yeah.
Now, for those who don't know you, who are you? What do you do?
Kind of like you said, I'm been Vice President, General Counsel here at Saddle Creek Logistics. We're a family-owned 3PL I've been doing business for over 50 years. Stationed in Lakeland, Florida, which, if you don't know where that is, that's right in between Orlando and Tampa, smack dab in the middle of the state. We have right around 50 locations across the country.
Wow.
Where we provide warehousing and fulfillment services, as well as we have transportation fleets in multiple cities, and like you said, a brokerage operation as well. So
Now, I met you for the first time at the Motor Carrier Insurance Education Foundation. We gave a joint discussion with some other folks in the legal community. But for those in the business of law, like, where did you go to law school? What did you do? Like, what got you into supply chain?
yeah, it's so I went to Michigan State
Go
College of
green.
Law. Yeah, go green, go white. And so I graduated. Now it's so long ago, 2006. And so after my second year of law school, my wife and I, we were deciding, well, where do we want to go? What do we want to do? And I was not interested in really staying in the snow. So we we decided Florida was the place. And so I during law school, I had an opportunity to work at the Ionia County Prosecutor's Office for 2 years.
Hmm.
Uh, now it's the Honorable Ron Schaefer. He was the prosecutor, the elected official at that time, and I
Wow.
learned a lot from Ron. He was a great lawyer, and so I had a lot of experience already, almost 2 years of working at the prosecutor's office as prosecutor. So I put my resume out to every single prosecutor's office, state attorney's office here in the state of Florida, and had a lot of feedback. So after the bar exam, I stayed down here. I went and drove around the state. I interviewed at 7 different prosecutors' offices that week,
Wow.
and had 3 offers. And so then I'm here on the phone with my wife and telling her, hey, these are the ones. And so the Bartow, the Polk County one, that's where Lakeland is based. That was the offer that I felt was the right fit.
Okay.
And it was more about the opportunity to do bigger cases faster. I didn't want to just do measly pot charges at the outset. I was like, I can
Now forget
do
those
that nicely.
misdemeanors. I want some
Yeah,
felonies.
yeah. And so that was kind of it. And so I we packed up everything we could fit in our 2 cars, and we drove down from East Lansing down to Lakeland, Florida, and I haven't looked back since.
So were you married during law school?
Yeah, after my first year. So we got engaged while we were in college, and
Yeah.
my wife was basically, well, either we're getting married or I'm not going to put you through law school. So yeah, that was it. We were engaged when we moved, and after the first year of law school, got married, and so now we've been married over 20 years. And
There is some very similar pieces here. So my wife and we got engaged in, I think it was probably 2005 or 2006, but I began law school in 2007, and we were married in 2008. So I skipped an evidence course with Callan to go get married. And for the rest of that semester, Callan has passed away.
yeah,
God rest his soul. But he would use me in every example. Like, well, when Mr. Leffler says I do, is that hearsay? And it's
yeah,
phenomenal. So I think we're aberrations in this space. So for me, I found the woman who could tolerate me, and there's only a handful of
that's
people that can put up with me.
yeah. No, and it's if she can, if your wife can deal with you at your absolute worst while you were in law school, after the first year of law school and still want to stay with you, she is a keeper. And
Did you enjoy law school? I loved it. I loved the experience.
there were certain aspects of it that I enjoyed. I hate the Socratic method. And when you say Professor Callan's class, that was the one that probably terrified me the most, because he did that whole thing with the stack of cards, and your name is on one of those cards, and you
That's right.
shuffle them up at the beginning of class, civil procedure, and gosh, you're just sitting there, and just the angst and the anxiety that would come as he's flipping over a card at
Yeah.
the front of the classroom, and you're like, please don't be me, please don't be me, please don't be me. And you can only pass once. and you had
That's
to
right.
save that pass for, whatever indiscretions you had the night before that you didn't want to have to do it. And I had civil procedure was first class of the day, so it was like 8:30 in the morning, and so it
Oh
wasn't
man.
always the prettiest thing.
It's one of those things where, like, for people that haven't been through the process of being in law school and having to answer these questions, knowing that there's this massive curve that some will fail, some will succeed, and you have really very limited control over that. It makes people go crazy, makes people go bananas. It's such a stressful environment. So once we get out of law school, you sit for the bar. Were you always planning Florida, or were you thinking maybe somewhere else?
Uh, we had contemplated either Arizona, North Carolina, or Florida, where those
Okay,
were kind of the locations. But Florida was just seemed to make the most sense, and so you know, uh, we were able. There was a group of us, about 12 of us, that were all thinking of going to Florida. So we were able to convince Barbary to offer a prep class at
yeah.
the college, and so that was an amazing godsend, really. Because if not, I would have been studying by myself.
Yeah, and you got to take
And
those prep courses for the law students out there. Like, you cannot do it alone. Maybe you can, but don't risk it. Like, there's no reason to not take those prep
oh,
courses.
completely agree. And so we would studying for the bar that summer. I think that now that all these, probably we have a whole bunch of people that are just starting it. And so
Yeah,
we go the morning from 8 till noon. We would have the prep class that we'd sit there, and then the second half of the day it was doing test exam
that's right.
questions. And
That's right.
so that it's Florida is very different from Michigan's bar exam. It's still 2 days, but it's split up where half of it is essay and the other half is multiple choice.
Yeah.
And so where Michigan is it still all essay?
I just took Illinois, so I have no idea.
Okay,
And I took the
so,
bar back in 2010. So my
yeah.
memory of the world is very different than it is these days. I'm sure it's
So
all digital now.
it most likely, I remember the oh boy, you had to pay an extra fee to bring your laptop. And the idea of somebody having to read my handwriting in a blue book was just terrifying to me.
100%.
So I typed everything. But then the other part that's so terrifying to you is you hear these horror stories of people's batteries going dead or their computer going dead. I think I took it to Best Buy like the week before the bar exam to make sure everything was good to go, and had the Geek Squad get it all up and running.
100%.
So that was probably the most terrifying. I was more terrified of my computer crashing than I was actually the bar exam.
I had bought this like this watch. I thought it was just an analog watch, like nothing digital about it. But like I was like using that for my timer, and I mistakenly thought you could bring a watch with you. And they're like, "No, you can't." I'm like, I've done all my prep. Okay, fine, fine. You watch the clock. Everything is so there's so much pressure to it. But when you pass the bar, you go to the prosecutor's office. How many cases does a prosecutor like typically run? Like, how many cases would you be involved with at that office?
It was definitely a baptism by fire. So I they give you, and that's, I think, was the best part of that being the start to my legal career, was that you had to learn fast.
Yeah.
And it was, I was taking over a caseload from another attorney that was being elevated to the felony division. And so I'm in this misdemeanor courtroom, and I have 4 boxes of cases. So it's like around 200 cases that are in the trial posture.
Oh
And
my
this isn't
gosh.
even including the other 50 to 100 cases that are just coming in now. So you've got to clear this docket quick.
Yeah.
And so you get all the cases, and you got to get up to speed on these things really quickly. So you've got attorneys coming in, and my first day is mandatory docketing day. And so we're looking at putting cases on the trial docket for the following week. And I'm just like, we're trying to get some deals here and there,
Wow.
trying to work things out. But the best advice was my mentor at that time. He's like, the worst somebody's going to be is somebody's going to jail for a year. So,
Okay.
and if somebody doesn't end up going to jail for a year because they had a little bit of pot on in their car, it's not the end of the world. It's that other part when you go to felonies, and you've got some real victims here that are that you're trying to serve justice for, you're trying to get justice for, and or you're protecting the community. That's when it was the but you're cutting your teeth on these smaller cases that don't have a huge impact. Now, of course, I took them as like the most serious thing in the
A hundred
world. Like
percent.
I'm Perry Mason. I am wanting to serve justice, wear the white hat, so to speak, and
Mhm.
save the day. And so, of course, you take it a little bit probably more serious than I should have. But it's a big deal. You just spent 3 years of your life preparing for this moment,
Mhm.
and being able to now try a case and being able to have a jury hear what you have to say. It's invigorating,
Yeah,
and
I
you
I
want to take
love
that
that
serious.
I love that analogy is like how talking to the jury, how it gets you excited, gets you pumped up. Because I think in that circumstance, you were talking about someone's liberty. And you already kind of outlined the caseload that you had going in there. On the defense attorney side for criminal defense, it's similar. I mean, you might have on average 150, 200 cases in front of you. Maybe you can spend 10 to 15 minutes. And it kind of makes sense for people who aren't lawyers to understand this might be partially why 95% of cases never go to trial.
Yeah,
They're settled and there's a plea agreement and you move on. But when you're talking about someone's liberty, that is the most important thing you can deal with. So even if it's for a day you're in custody, it's such an important role that you have. How
yeah.
long did you do that for?
3.5 years, and shout out to my state attorney and public defender friends and colleagues, and or because that is especially on the public defender side. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a thankless job, and I've seen many very very good attorneys just be chastised by people that are, granted, they're in the process due to their own actions,
Hmm.
but they're taking out their frustrations on these people that are really just trying to help them, and they're not paid very well. Same from
Yeah.
the state attorney side. You have people that are trying to protect the citizens of your state and your county, and they're not paid very well, and they've got tremendous caseload, and
Yeah.
so the kudos to them. I really do think that I learned a lot, that really have benefited me moving forward. You learn a lot about time management and issue spotting. Being able to deal with other attorneys on the other side. I think that's a huge. Being able to
Yeah.
communicate is a major thing that they don't teach you in law school. They they
Absolutely.
they teach you the X's and O's, but they don't teach you how to negotiate properly with another attorney when you have these matters at hand.
That's a really interesting thread I want to pull because when you're presenting a case or trying a case in front of a jury of your peers, this is breaking out really complicated legal topics. You're talking the prima facie case, here are the elements, but you have to do it in a way that's accessible to somebody. And I can imagine the way that you communicate with the jury is not that dissimilar to talking with stakeholders as a general counsel. So
Oh, completely agree.
that
Completely
skill
agree.
set's so amazing. What I always find fascinating is the professional courtesies given between prosecutors and defense attorneys. You would think that these individuals would hate each other and fight with everything, but the reality is they get along professionally. Like you can disagree with somebody, but you're all serving a purpose. And there's such like I've been in the civil world, and like that can be vicious, but I've never seen that level of um, you know, friction in the prosecutor's offices or the defense attorney's offices. Have you seen something similar?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. It's because they're in the same situation where they've got a massive caseload, and they could push the issue just as much if they really want to make your life very difficult. They could just set everything for trial, even though they have no intention of going to trial, but
Yeah.
or no desire to. But they could play the leverage game just as much as you can, and so you've got to be reasonable in your offers. You've got to see. You've got to have that give and take of, well, hey, have you thought about this from an issue standpoint? Oh, I hadn't really contemplated that, but here's my concerns of this and this. And so when you're looking at somebody with a tremendous rap sheet, maybe my case isn't as great, but I'm willing to roll the dice on that because this guy's got a really bad history.
And you'll see those attorneys tomorrow. Like you're going to
Right.
be in the same weeds. And that's why I think people kind of forget, like in the day and age of social media, you can scream vicious things at people. You never deal with them. But like in an adversarial system where we are paid to fight and win, we're friendly or we get along. We're professional because that's what our practice requires us to do. So you're in the prosecutor's office, the state attorney general, and then you move to private practice, right? Like how does that transition move out? Like what was the thinking from going from a public kind of job into the private practice world?
So, it's sometimes it's just being lucky in the circumstances, like any job. And so I was practicing at the state attorney's office. You are part of a team that is in front of one judge. And so I was exclusively in front of this one judge. And he just happened to be a former partner prior to taking the bench. He was a former partner in a large law firm across the state, Gray Robinson. And so his former partner contacted him and said, "Hey, I need a new litigation associate. You got anybody that in mind?" And he recommended me.
Awesome.
And so this is where any word of advice is, if you've got an opportunity where you're working in front of a judge, just know the judge is always listening, and or all of the other attorneys. You have your opposing counsel as well, private attorneys. You hear so many cases where, like, well, I really liked how this guy handled himself, or this young lady handled themselves in this case. I think they've got a lot of talent, and that's really what it was. And so this judge went to bat for me, said, "I think that this is a person that can learn a lot." And so I ended up kind of falling into a role where I was learning from a very well-renowned civil attorney, and learning the ropes from him and his team for civil litigation practice.
That is such a great point you bring up because I think people often forget this. Your reputation precedes you. If you are good at what you do and people pay attention, you will have doors open for you. And people find jobs these days, maybe from applying blindly, but really it's a warm recommendation or a warm introduction to the right person. That is incredible. So what kind of cases were you doing in your civil practice?
So Mark had a very diverse practice, and he still does. He still practices now, not as much anymore. I think he's on that retirement track, but
that'll be like a 30-year process for most attorneys.
Oh
like,
yeah,
we'll be in our 90s still.
Yeah.
Yes, Your Honor.
And so Mark was doing. I cut my teeth doing a lot of commercial landlord-tenant stuff. He actually he used to be the city attorney for the city of Lakeland.
Okay.
So that was a part of the work that still was maintained. So I started doing eminent domain work. I started doing
municipal bonds.
No, I didn't have to do that, but we had a lot of we defended the police department in federal actions dealing with police brutality.
Qualified immunity, Jim. They're fine.
Boy, I had so many hearings and so many pleadings and memos that I had to write about qualified immunity. I could probably still write one pretty well.
Okay, so I want to highlight this for the folks that are watching and listening, because this is a phenomenally interesting thread I see in your career. So when you're on the federal prosecutor side, state prosecutor side, what you were working with, as we talked about earlier, is taking away someone's liberty. And it's a due process as a whole thing that you have to do. And then you go into the private practice side and you're touching eminent domain. And many people have a general understanding of eminent domain, but it is the process by which the government says, I want that, and you can't stop me from taking it. And there's a compensation that's given, and we can disagree. People can fight about what is a reasonable compensation, but these are the highest stakes things any lawyer can do. Taking away someone's liberty and taking away someone's property. And that requires a very, very good mindset to be able to do this. When you're in those moments, like, do you think about like the Constitution behind you, or is it, how do you view this kind of stuff?
It's Really, as long as you're following the process,
Hmm.
and that's where I feel it's just so important for you to really indicate to yourself, hey, the reason why we have these safeguards in place is because everybody's entitled to these unalienable rights. And so you have to follow the process as it's written. And if you don't, then you're doing a disservice to not only these individuals that are having their inalienable rights taken from them, but you are doing a disservice to the greater good, to the
Yeah.
to your oath that you've taken as an attorney. So that's where I always thought, is like, well, hey, I if I made a mistake and it requires now that we've got to go back and start the process again, then so be it. That's just the way it is.
This is
And
why I always take it with a grain of salt when someone says, "Oh, it was dismissed on a technicality." It's like you understand that the technicality is everything. I love civil procedure. I love understanding the process, and so you're in this place, doing the eminent domain, doing this other kind of work in the civil world. What gets you into the general counsel space? What gets you to go from working for the government, working for municipalities, and working for private practice to saying, I want to be the lawyer for this company? How does that transition happen? Because a lot of lawyers look at what you do and say, that is the goal that I have for my entire career.
yeah, it's again, it's one of those weird things. So I was really blessed. Gray Robinson was outstanding to me, and I got a lot of experience. And I always say it like, well, what kind of practice did you do when you were at GR? And I said, well, I really did door law. And it was really whatever partner came knocking on my door that day, I ended up having to learn that law. And so I got this real like start out with commercial litigation. Next thing you know, I'm helping out with a major M&A transaction that was here, and I was managing all the contracts and doing contract analysis for that. I helped out with bankruptcy stuff and doing all the contract stuff. And so where contracts started becoming more and more prevalent in my practice, either drafting or analyzing or amending, whatever the case was. So they allowed me to actually transition my practice into a more real estate and transactional practice. And so
Hmm.
that's where I was really, the last 3-4 years that I was there, that's where my primary focus was, while still doing a lot of real estate, uh, commercial transactions from a uh, landlord tenant matters.
Yeah.
So then come to see that another Lakeland based company here, Saddle Creek, was looking for somebody to come online and kind of help them, guide them from a legal standpoint. And so the title was actually a that was stated was a director of contracts and leases. It wasn't even
Oh,
like
oh,
attorney. It wasn't
a
even written
JD
in there.
preferred.
Yeah. So they some other people that knew me in the area, and just some friends, because part of part of the other part is that I always I'm a big believer that if this is where you're going to live, then you need to be part of the solution, not part of the problem.
Yeah.
And so you've got to put your heart and soul into making your community better. So I did have a great opportunity. They encourage at GR for you to get involved with your local community, do a lot of um, you know nonprofit work, things like that, and they encourage that. And so I kind of had my name out there just from that perspective. And so some other people that worked here, they suggested me to the other higher ups, and the person that was tasked with bringing a lawyer on site and bringing him on board, he and I just hit it off, and he
That's
was a
awesome.
great mentor to me before his retirement last year. And so I was brought on as the first lawyer after a long interviewing process. I was brought on to kind of start the legal department here at Saddle Creek.
That's fascinating. And a brief segue. So the only kind of real estate law that I ever got really involved with was mechanics liens. And so most people are like, "Oh, you mean like fixing something?" And no, it's real estate. It's a lien that you have as a construction worker on a property. You can foreclose it. So I was in the Chancery Court all the time, and I love, to this day, my favorite courts to be in, Chancery. I love
Mm.
Chancery. So you go into this company as was it a director to begin with, or did they initially they
Yeah,
change it to like, okay,
it
interesting.
was director at first, and director of contracts and leases. So the idea was I was just going to first get a hold on. Well, what are we doing from a contract perspective?
Mhm.
Where are the contracts? Who's doing
Yeah.
it? Who signs what? And that was like the first thing was you got to get a formal policy in place of how this is going to happen. Who can actually execute? I mean, we had just warehouse workers signing contracts. We had everything,
Yeah.
and it was just it's very entrepreneurial company, and so each site is kind of its own little kingdom. And that, hey, a lot of them are bringing in business, localized business, but then there's national business that kind of goes in different pieces too.
Absolutely.
So you're trying to both deal with national as well as small operations, anything to get money in the door, cover concrete. And so you have the vendor aspect, you have the customer aspect, you have the landlord tenant aspect. In some situations, we have ownership interests where we own the building and we might be leasing space. It was real complicated at first and really kind of get an understanding. And I was just completely blessed with just amazing operators.
Well,
I mean,
what
that teach you the ropes of some of the terminology I had never heard before. I didn't know what demurrage was.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
I think I was here like three months maybe. It's like, hey, we got this bill from the railroad.
It's been
They say
sitting
that
for a long time.
they're charging us $280,000 for demurrage. Do you know what that is? I'm like, Google
Me,
does.
yeah, Google will tell you
So
all
I'm
about
gonna
that.
I'm gonna figure it out. And yes,
Well,
so
this is
that's
why I think it's so interesting, Jim, because like businesses as they grow and they scale, they're always outsourcing legal services because that's not their subject matter expertise. And then you get to a place of entry, like, wait a second, we are spending enormous amounts of money. And part of the role of a general counsel is to evaluate which lawyers you work with and what things can you do in-house, what things can you do outside. And what makes me so excited as you kind of outline this is your career, like every step you've taken, is building you up to be like the perfect guy for that moment. Because when a company goes from a couple $100 million a year to the next stage, it's a different set of skills. Not that they did things wrong before, but it didn't make as much of a difference, or it wasn't as necessary to have internal resources. So you come in there, and like so many general counsels, for the folks that are watching and listening, you start off by yourself. Like it's just you in the law department. So tell me, like, how does it evolve over time? So when you start off to where you are today, how big is the team? What are you guys working on these days?
Yeah, so it started out with just me, and really I was handling just contracts primarily. And then it started with we had a big claim. We had a big
Hmm.
a liability claim, and it was involving what is now our largest customer in a relatively new location. And the guy that was kind of handling the insurance side, he just it was foreign to him what was
Mhm.
going on. But when I got involved, I started seeing where our excess carrier was acting in bad faith, and it was clear as day to me
Wow.
that. And so we started. I got involved and started immediately sending hammer letters to our excess carrier saying, hey, you're acting in bad faith if you don't do this. And then there's a litigation attorney I use locally here that who I respect greatly. I called him up and I said, hey, we need to start couching this to we're going to get stuck holding the bag in this
Mm.
claim. And it was somewhere to the tune of about $3 million we did get stuck with because our initial layer paid their money, but then excess layer started playing games. And so I got brought in to really kind of handle that. And then they realized, okay, we've got to let him start handling a lot more stuff.
Yeah.
And so that's where it started. And right after that case resolved, and actually I have a check on my wall here that the executive team gave me when we recovered the full $3 million
Yeah,
from the
buddy.
excess
That's
carrier.
it. There you
They all
go.
signed it. It's one of my most cherished mementos here in my office. And
That's amazing.
so we after that we hired a young associate, and so then we had an army of two for a while, and then had an admin brought in shortly thereafter. And then, unfortunately, as any time you bring in a young, brilliant lawyer, somebody noticed her shining star very quickly, and she was poached by the big coffee giant of Starbucks,
Oh, wow.
and so now she's in house at Starbucks. She's one of their. She's really probably their true supply chain lawyer there, and I couldn't be proud of her. She's just a brilliant attorney and a good friend still. So
I love that you as you wrap that story up, because so often we hear people like, oh, we got this great person, we invested in them, we did all this training for them, and then they leave us. We lost all this great time, and it's a big loss for us as a company. But the mentality of, I am so excited that they
yeah,
can learn from somebody and someone notices the quality. It speaks to you as a leader. It speaks to you as an institution that you can develop talent. There is nothing better than seeing where talent ends up over time, because the best success of your own is what impact you make for others. And that's incredible to hear that. I want to pull another thread we haven't talked about. So in the world of state prosecutors and state government, I'm sure there's some version of billable hour. In private practice, I absolutely know there's
yeah,
billable hours.
definitely.
At the point ones, we live and die by the 6-minute interval. But now in general counsel role, is that a thing that you think about? Are you worried about the time you put into things?
I don't, and that is a sorry. So that is a it's odd because I have other friends that are in-house at places, and they do a similar billable hour kind of. We're not there right now. I wouldn't be surprised if we have something in the future where we're at least managing some time, because our time is valuable, and you
100%.
want to see what areas of the company are utilizing your resources the most, and then kind of from an accounting procedure of where do you maybe have some of your costs allocated to.
Are
But
you checking the times on the outside counsel though? Like, hey, that email shouldn't be a 0.2. That should be a 0.1.
yeah, I do. Your point's taken. Is that when you're in private practice, the bane of my existence was the end of the month where I had to make sure all my billable hours were
Mhm.
in, checking billable hours, and then seeing them get cut from general counsels that I was working for after I just busted my butt. And I'm like, oh, I thought I was pretty accurate about what my time was, but so I don't think I'm as harsh with the red pen as some other GCs, and maybe I'll get worse as I grow in my role. But there's a couple that I'll have to talk to. I'm like, hey, I'm looking at this, and I'm wondering why I'm getting a lot of duplicative
Yeah.
but if you're working with good people on the outside, you shouldn't have to do
Yeah.
that.
$100.
And I think it comes with, hey, I'm going to give you a chance. And if for some reason I'm just not believing in either the work product that you're providing me with, or that you're taking advantage of my my good graces, then I'm not going to use you again. And so the attorneys I use, I tend to go back to the well, to the same attorneys that
That's right.
I've trusted, that got me out of sticky. The ones that when I call, they take the call,
That's
and
right.
and if I'm just one of those people that it's just not as important to you, then you know what, I'm probably not going to use you, because I want my work to be deemed as important.
Absolutely. I want to segue to talking about automation. So the
Yeah.
legal profession, to an extent, there's a lot of, I mean, there is a ton of automation happening for us these days. People use chat, people use Grok, people are using like AI powered contracts. Are you seeing the robots creep into your practice, or are you really seeing it in other places? 'Cause we're going to segue to the equipment and all the other
Yeah.
uh, AI things out there.
So I have it. I mean, I have chat on my or Copilot on our Microsoft account. I don't use it all that much, with the exception of, hey, have it read everything and give me a highlight version, especially like really long emails chains or medical records or something like that. Hey, give me
Yeah,
break
that's
break
the
it
way to
down.
do it. Absolutely.
Break it down to high level stuff because I'm not the trial attorney on these things,
Yeah.
on those types of cases. So I'm just looking really for the high level points so I have something to discuss that I might have some concerns about. I mean, I know how to try a case, and so I think I'm still pretty good at issue spotting. So I'll bring that up to outside counsel, but I'm really looking for that specific legal expertise on the outside. So, I'll use it for crafting emails or redrafting emails or letters, or hey, maybe I'm looking for a nuanced version of a force majeure section, and I might want to see what chat comes up with. So I'll utilize that when doing contractual matters, or I'm trying to figure out, hey, how could I reword this? And maybe I'm just not thinking at that time
Yeah.
or maybe a state nuanced version too.
Well, and now like we're seeing, and we talked about this at the Motor Carrier Insurance Education Foundation, is this rise of automation. So brokers are using different forms of AI for load matching or for talking to carriers. We see there are carriers who are using some sort of AI to communicate and negotiate with brokers. You see autonomous trucks getting more and more, stuff happening in the news. Aurora and Werner made an announcement, and there's a whole bunch of other things in automation. But you guys have deployed actual automation inside some of your facilities. So can you talk a little bit about, like, as a lawyer, as a general counsel, what do you have to think about when you're like, okay, we're going to start using something that we've never used before, and we're going to see how it works for our business? What is that like for you?
Yeah, I think it starts slow, at least from our standpoint, because you don't really know where it's going to go. So we have some automated forklifts, which it's just amazing to see.
Those are
Automated
spectacular.
Oh,
Those are
it's
insane.
really impressive, and seeing it work and operate, and just a real systematic approach. The the concerns I have on there is, hey, are we who owns what data? What type of data access do we have? What are our safeguards in place, making sure that that's done? Have we thought about the location of where it is? What kind of interaction is it going to have with our associates as well, making
Mhm.
sure that they're kept safe? What do we do in case it goes down? Whose obligation it is to repair? Because these are expensive pieces of equipment.
That's
And
capital expenditures, man.
and,
Absolutely.
and so I'm thinking of that almost first and foremost, of like, who's going to pay for this thing and how. So what happens if it goes down? What happens if it gets beat up by hitting a beam inside what happens if it hits a beam inside my warehouse?
Is it product liability? Is it
Yeah.
is the AI the thing that's liable? Is it the manufacturer? Is it the maintenance? It's so many pieces. It's fascinating.
So, and then I really rely on my IIS department and our technology and innovation team
Mhm.
to really help me guide with some of these terminologies that are utilized. And, that's where you, as a general counsel or in-house attorney, you have to have the ability to say to yourself, okay, I am not the smartest guy here. It's just, and I think that lawyers sometimes get in that trap where you have to like maybe present yourself as the smartest person in the world. But I can tell you right now, I work with some of the most brilliant engineers and IS team, and our technology and innovation team is just top notch. And listening to them, I just get all excited, and it is like, and then you've got to be the wet blanket sometimes and say, hey, whoa,
Yeah. Pump the
this is
brakes.
really cool, guys. This is super cool, but these are my concerns, and here's the
Yeah.
reason why. And then just explaining it, my perspective from it, and being able to articulate it, and then have them try to explain to them, hey guys, can you break it down like I'm a 5-year-old and explain to me how this is going to work? And really, that's been a good team building exercise and communication exercise from my standpoint. I think 9 years ago, I was a much different communicator than I am now. And I think a lot of that is just that interaction between incredibly smart people in a niche. And I feel like I can hold my own on a lot of different things too. And just being able to talk the same language and come to a resolution on things is really important in this role.
Well, so you've have we traced your career? You've been in the state prosecutor's office. You've been private practice. You've been general counsel in a supply chain company. Do you think you'll ever escape supply chain? Have you come to grips with, like, that is not an option, or do you still have this belief that maybe you could do something different if you wanted to?
No, I don't think. And the thing is that one thing I wanted to talk about, at least because I know that you have a lot of students that are probably listening, and is, the one thing that's real in our industry, in our practice, is imposter syndrome, and
Mm,
I will freely admit that that's something that I struggled with, and still to this day struggle with it, because you're not always understanding exactly everything that's going on, and the world is changing constantly, and just own that, hey, you might not know. And my former boss, one piece that I took away from it, it's okay to say you don't know.
that's the best
And
answer
it,
sometimes.
it it really is, and I think that most people will respect you for that, is you don't know, but you're going to go out there and you're going to bust your butt to figure it out. And if you don't know, then find somebody that does. And so that's where I think that now, being in this space for a while, I've now I remember going to like conferences, or reading articles, or listening to podcasts about supply chain law, and the UCC and how it interplays with it, or transportation or employment law, that I didn't really have a big background in, but I got a great HR department that, with some really great experts in HR and employment law, and I've been able to really learn from them, along with a lot of my own CLE educations and
Yeah.
understanding. And so just learn that, and then now I feel like I do have a pretty good, robust knowledge within this space. And so I sit on I'm chair of the International Warehouse and Logistics Association's legal and insurance group. We do a symposium every year that I help chair and manage, and in that, I have people come up to me all the time and asking me my input on what I think on a topic, or how do I handle something in my practice. And that's really reassuring. I think that now I'm not that person that while I'm still in the room and I might be nervous about what somebody might be thinking, and I've got to push that to the side now, and I'm saying to myself, you know what? There's a lot of people that come to me for advice on some of these topics, so maybe I do know a thing or two.
Yeah. Well, let's pull that thread further. So, what advice would you give to law students that want to join into the supply chain? Or what kind of things should they know to be effective lawyers in supply chain?
Well, know the UCC. That's or start learning it, because it's a huge component. Warehouseman's liens is a topic that I'm constantly having with our finance team, as well as our operations and sales team. Understanding that dynamic, and I really think that commercial litigation is just a huge benefit to your practice. If you have any opportunity to take some time to be able to work in a commercial litigation, I think that is so beneficial, because you're dealing with very complex issues in contracts, and finding different ways to get around certain language, or language that you might want to put into a contract later on,
Yeah.
because hey, I remember this case where we didn't have this, and this was a big issue, and now force majeure, that was one of those things. I never thought the force majeure was all that important until COVID hit. And man,
Everyone's Googling that one. Wait a second.
when
What's
when
happening?
you write 250 force majeure notices to customers, that is eh, that is immediate. You understand the
Wow.
importance of certain sections of contracts, or waivers of consequential damages, or limits of liability, or insurance obligations, and those are just critical areas that sometimes get overlooked, I think, especially, so many people use Google, or they use AI, and you have young entrepreneurs they're just trying to save a buck, and
Yeah.
so they're using these to write these contracts, but they don't understand the terms. And
Exactly. That's the key. That might be the language may be okay, but they don't understand what it means.
yeah, and so to young lawyers, I'd say, hey, know that you're not going to know everything when you come out of law school. They tell you that they teach you maybe the first 10%, and then the other 90% is something that you learn in the first 3 years of your practice. Find a good law firm or a good practice, someplace where you're going to actually learn something, and just own it. Take
It,
it wherever you can, and take every opportunity you can.
it's about getting the reps in. Whether you're doing the reps at the prosecutor's office, you're getting the reps at an insurance defense firm, you have to practice to learn this business. What was your like? You have any fond memories of the law college? Because I know my fellow faculty members would love to hear any positive feedback you have about your time in East Lansing.
Uh, you know what? Um, Sometimes it's just having that encouragement from your professor. And Adam Candu, I don't even know if Adam's still
He's
if
there.
he's
He's still
still
there.
is he there. So
Absolutely.
you know what? He was so kind to me, and I took the communications law and policy class from him, and I ended up booking that class,
Yeah.
and it was he was always so encouraging, and he helped me rethink how to think about policies and how to read policies and how to procedures and well, while I was not going into communications, I was not going to go to the FCC to work at any time in my practice, but just he made me flip my switch about how to think about things. And
Yeah.
but he was always really encouraging about it, and it was never a stupid question. And I think that was something I just took away from is like, somebody might come to you and have a question, and they're coming to you because they respect you for your expertise. And so don't talk down to somebody.
Yeah.
Educate them. Take that opportunity to educate them, because at some point it's the script is going to be flipped, and you're going to have an opportunity where somebody's going to come and talk to you, and think about how you were treated, and what are the people that you're remembering, the people that talk down to you like, hey, you're an idiot, why are you talking, why are you asking me these stupid questions, or the people that actually take it and they take that opportunity to really say, hey, you know what, I respect that you're actually asking me this, let me help you with this. And that was something that I really took away. And so, Adam, if you are listening, hey, thank you. You meant a lot to me.
I will absolutely make sure he gets a copy of this little clip of this part of it. Now, I'll end with a little last thing. So I still have all of my law books sitting here on display. Because like I realized they have no utility at this point. They're purely decorations. Did you sell all your books, or did you hold on to some of them?
So I actually, there was a guy in my apartment that he was a 3L when my wife and I moved into this apartment complex. And so he ended up going to North Carolina. He gave me all of his old study guides,
Nice.
everything. So I felt like I needed to pay it forward. So there was a young lady that was going to law school that was working with my wife at the restaurant that she was working at, and I just gave all my stuff to them and
That's
said,
so
hey,
cool.
say, pass it along,
I,
pay it
I'll,
forward.
I'll send you a picture of this, but one of my former professors, Timothy Dinan, I think is his name. Tim was moving offices. He was practicing in Detroit, and he had an entire law library of all of the Michigan compiled statutes, every single book, thousands of books. And in our practice these days, like, you don't need books. Like there's Westlaw, there's Lexis, there's no reason to have it. And he was like, I'm going to throw them away. I'm like, well, me and my father drove to Detroit from Chicago, filled up his truck with every single box of books. And in my basement, I have an entire wall of law books that have absolutely no particular utility, but I just like them. It's a nice reminder of the stuff that we did. Well, as we wrap up today, Jim, I can't thank you enough for making time. If people want to learn more about you or learn more about Saddle Creek, like, where can they go and where can they find you?
All right, so I'm on LinkedIn. So if anybody had a question, I'm also part of the IWLA, so you can look on that. And if you are interested in warehouse and logistics, the IWLA is a great location. We do have a symposium that's going to be in Chicago, so maybe we can get together when I'm up there.
When is the symposium?
It's in November. I can't remember the exact date. We just had a meeting yesterday about planning for this year's symposium. So it's going to be great.
Great to be in November. Great.
Oh yeah. I'm really looking forward to it. Actually, that was my first conference when I started here. I started
awesome.
in September, and the symposium was in November, and I hadn't seen snow in probably 10 years. And I get there, and the last day, I'm getting ready to take my drive to Midway, get a taxi to Midway, and it just starts snowing like crazy. And of course, my flight gets delayed, and I'm calling my wife. I'm like, of course, this snow had to come while I'm here. But
You think you can get out, but we pull you back in.
yeah,
Oh
exactly.
man. Well, thank you so much. I'll make sure to put some the links to those organizations into your LinkedIn profile and the
Yeah.
show notes. But Jim, thank you so much for making time. I cannot thank you enough for sharing your experience and your journey in this industry. I think it's been a great conversation. So thank you so much, my friend.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Well, that's the show, folks. We did it. Episode 99 in the books. Episode 100 coming up next week. We will have a very interesting surprise for you. Episode 100 of the Armchair Attorney podcast will have JJ Schickel, former CEO of Omni, the founder of Eve Partners, a private equity firm in the transportation and logistics space. Look, it is not easy moving freight safely, on time, and undamaged, even in the best circumstances. But people like Jim make it possible. Companies like Saddle Creek help you keep your freight moving, keep it safe, and help you distribute it. I love this business. I am here not because it's easy. I'm here because it's hard. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for following the program. If you like it, subscribe to the podcast, Armchair Attorney Podcast, on Spotify and Apple. Thank you to my friends at DAT, Dial a Truck. I had a blast at the Executive Symposium, and hopefully I will see you at DATCon. You know, DATCon. DATCon's coming in Chicago. Just like Jim's got his thing in November, we have the DATCon happening in September in Chicago. Make it easy for me. You don't have to commute. I'll catch you next time on the Armchair Attorney Podcast. Thank you, and have yourself a terrific weekend. You've earned it. We've made it. Until next time.